The gunshot echoed through the empty street like thunder, and Elena Morales hit the floor of her shoe repair shop, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Glass shattered somewhere behind her, a picture frame of her and Mario on their wedding day, 45 years ago, and for a terrifying moment, she thought this was how her story would end. Alone, bleeding out on the same linoleum floor where she'd spent half her life fixing other people's broken things. But the gunshot hadn't been meant for her. It was a warning shot, fired into the ceiling by the tall figure standing in her doorway, hood pulled low, face hidden in shadow. "Get up, old lady. Now." Elena's hands shook as she pushed herself up from the cold floor, her 73-year-old body protesting every movement. The pain in her arthritic knees was nothing compared to the terror clawing at her chest. In 42 years of running Morales Shoe Repair, she'd never been robbed. Never even had so much as a harsh word from a customer. This quiet corner of East Los Angeles had always felt safe, protected by the tight-knit community of families who'd known each other for generations. But tonight, safety was just an illusion, shattered like the glass crunching under her feet. "Please," Elena whispered, her voice barely audible over the buzzing fluorescent lights overhead. "I don't have much money. Maybe $60 in the register. You can have it all." The gunman stepped into the shop, and Elena could see two more figures behind him, their faces also hidden by dark hoodies. The bell above the door chimed cheerfully, the same bell that had welcomed thousands of customers over the decades, now announcing her worst nightmare. "We're not here for pocket change," the gunman said, and Elena could tell from his voice that he was young, maybe early 20s. "We want whatever's valuable. Jewelry, electronics, anything we can flip for real money." Elena's eyes darted around her small shop, trying to see it through their eyes. The ancient cash register that sometimes stuck when you press the numbers. The rows of worn shoes waiting for repair, each pair telling a story of long days and hard work. The scattered tools of her trade, hammers, awls, leather needles, bottles of dye and polish. To her, these things were precious, representing a lifetime of honest work. To them, they were probably worthless junk. "I don't have jewelry here," Elena said, raising her hand slowly. "This is just a shoe repair shop. I fix people's shoes. That's all." The second robber, shorter and thinner than the leader, moved deeper into the shop, his eyes scanning every corner. "There's gotta be something. Old lady like you, working alone. You must keep valuables somewhere." Elena's breath caught in her throat as the robber's gaze landed on the back corner of the shop, where Mario's leather jacket hung on its usual hook. The same hook where she'd placed it every single night for the past 3 years, ever since the cancer had taken him away from her. It was her ritual, her way of keeping him close. Every morning she'd take the jacket down, hold it to her face, and breathe in the fading scent of his cologne and the leather oil he'd used to keep it soft. Every night she'd hang it back up, whispering "Buenas noches, mi amor" before turning off the lights. The jacket was old, probably worth $20 at a thrift store. The leather was cracked at the elbows from years of wear, and one of the zippers had broken long ago. But to Elena, it was priceless. More than that, it held a secret she'd been too afraid to confront for 3 years. In the left pocket was an envelope with her name written on it in Mario's careful handwriting. She'd found it the day after his funeral, when she'd finally worked up the courage to go through his clothes. The envelope was sealed, and something about the way her name was written, not Elena or Querida, but para mi esposa Elena, formal and final, had filled her with dread. She'd never opened it. Couldn't bring herself to read what might be Mario's final words to her. What if it contained regrets? Confessions? What if, after 45 years of marriage, she discovered there were things about her husband she'd never known? Some secrets were better left buried, she'd told herself. Some letters were better left unread. "That jacket looks decent," the third robber said, speaking for the first time. His voice was different from the others, softer, with a slight tremor that suggested nerves or inexperience. "Real leather. Vintage. Could be worth something." "No." The word burst from Elena's lips before she could stop it. "Please, not that. It was my husband's. He's dead. It's all I have left of him." The leader turned the gun toward her, and Elena saw her reflection in his dark eyes, a frightened old woman, alone and defenseless. "Back off, lady. We'll take whatever we want." Elena's chest tightened with panic. She thought of Mario, of how he'd always protected her, always made her feel safe. He'd been a gentle man, quiet and kind, who'd never raised his voice or his hand to anyone. But he'd been strong too, in his quiet way. He would have stepped between her and danger without hesitation. But Mario wasn't here. Mario was gone, and she was alone. The third robber moved toward the jacket, and Elena found herself stepping sideways, her body moving instinctively to block his path. "Please, I'm begging you. Take the money. Take anything else. But not that jacket. It doesn't have any value to anyone but me. Get out of the way," the leader snarled, raising the gun higher. Elena's knees nearly buckled, but she held her ground. "You don't understand. That jacket. It's the only thing I have left of him. We were married for 45 years. 45 years. He wore that jacket on our first date. He wore it to our wedding rehearsal. He wore it the day he told me he was sick." Her voice broke on the last word, and tears she'd been holding back for 3 years suddenly spilled down her cheeks. The robbers shifted uncomfortably, but they didn't lower their weapons. "Look, lady," the second robber said, his voice slightly gentler. "We're not here to hurt you, but we need money, and we need it now. That jacket might be worth 50, maybe $100. It's not gonna kill you to let it go." Elena shook her head violently. "You don't understand. There's something in the pocket. A letter. My husband wrote me a letter before he died, and I've never read it. If you take that jacket, I'll lose the last message he ever wanted to give me." The leader laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "A love letter? Seriously? Lady, your dead husband ain't gonna pay our bills." The casual cruelty of his words hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd spent 3 years grieving Mario, 3 years trying to figure out how to live without the man who'd been the center of her world for nearly half a century. And now these strangers were treating his memory like it was nothing, like 45 years of love and devotion was just a joke to them. Something shifted inside Elena then. The fear was still there, cold and sharp in her belly, but it was joined by something else. Anger. Pure, righteous anger at the injustice of it all. "His name was Mario," she said, her voice stronger now. "Mario Morales. He came to this country with nothing when he was 17 years old. Couldn't speak English, didn't know anyone, had $20 in his pocket and a suitcase held together with rope. He worked construction during the day and went to school at night. Saved every penny for 10 years until he could afford to open the shop." The robbers glanced at each other, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking, but Elena wasn't finished. "He fixed shoes for 42 years. 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. Never took a vacation, never bought anything fancy for himself. You know what his biggest luxury was? A cup of coffee from the diner next door every morning at exactly 7:30. $2.50, and he'd sit on that stool by the window and wave at Mrs. Rodriguez when she walked her grandson to school." Elena gestured toward the small stool by the front window, where Mario had indeed sat every morning for decades, watching the neighborhood wake up around him. He fixed shoes for movie stars and maids, for bankers and bus drivers. Treated everyone exactly the same. If someone couldn't afford to pay, he'd fix their shoes anyway and tell them to pay when they could. Half the people on this block still owe him money, and you know what? He never asked for it back. Never even wrote it down. The third robber had stopped moving toward the jacket. He stood frozen in the middle of the shop, his head tilted slightly, as if he was actually listening. "When I got sick with pneumonia 15 years ago and couldn't work for 3 months, he took care of me. Fed me soup, read to me. Never left my side except to go to work. When he got diagnosed with cancer, I tried to do the same for him, but..." Elena's voice faltered. "But I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't brave enough. I couldn't watch him suffer, so I spent his last months crying in the bathroom and pretending everything was fine when I was with him." The shop fell silent except for the persistent buzzing of the fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic on the main street. Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt on her cheek. That letter in his jacket pocket is probably the only honest conversation we would have had about his dying. And I've been too much of a coward to read it for 3 years. So maybe you're right. Maybe I should just let it go. Maybe some things are better left unknown. Elena stepped aside, her shoulders sagging in defeat.
Take it.
Take the jacket. Take everything. I'm tired of being afraid. But as the third robber reached for the jacket, something unexpected happened. His had caught on the coat hook and slipped back, revealing his face. Elena's world stopped. The face looking back at her was 20 years younger than when she'd last seen it, hardened by streets and bad choices and God knew what else. But the eyes were unmistakable, dark brown, with long lashes that had made all the girls in his elementary school class jealous. The stubborn jawline was the same, though now covered with patchy facial hair. And there, just above his left eyebrow, was the small crescent-shaped scar he'd gotten when he was 7 years old, falling off his bike in this very alley while trying to impress his friends with a trick he'd seen on TV. Miguel? The name escaped Elena's lips like a prayer, or maybe a curse. She wasn't sure which. Miguel Morales, her daughter Carmen's boy, her only grandchild, the sweet kid who used to sit in the corner of the shop doing his homework while she worked late into the evening, froze like a deer in headlights. His face, already pale from whatever substances were coursing through his system, went completely white. For a moment that felt like an eternity, grandmother and grandson stared at each other across the fluorescent-lit shop. Elena saw recognition flicker in Miguel's eyes, followed quickly by shame so deep it seemed to physically pain him. His mouth opened and closed like he was trying to speak, but no words came out. "You know this punk?" the leader demanded, swinging the gun between Elena and Miguel. Elena couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. The boy standing in front of her looked like Miguel, had Miguel's scar and Miguel's eyes, but this couldn't be her grandson. Her Miguel had been a good kid, smart and funny and kind. He'd helped her sweep the shop floor on weekends, had brought her drawings from school, had called her well, in the same tone other kids might say, superhero. This hollow-eyed stranger with needle tracks on his arms and desperation carved into every line of his face. This couldn't be the same boy who used to fall asleep in her lap while she told him stories about Mexico and his grandfather's childhood. But it was. God help them both, it was Miguel. Elena whispered again, and this time it definitely sounded like a prayer. "Mijo, what happened to you?" Miguel's hands were shaking now, and Elena could see tears gathering in his eyes. "Abuela, his voice cracked like a 13-year-old's. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Well, this is touching," the leader said sarcastically. "But we're not here for a family reunion. Grab the jacket and let's go." "No, wait," Miguel started to say, but the second robber cut him off. "You didn't tell us you had family here, man. This complicates things." "She's not, I didn't know." Miguel was stammering, looking back and forth between Elena and his partners. "This is my grandmother's shop." Elena felt something inside her chest crack, like ice breaking on a frozen pond. "Your grandmother's shop," she repeated slowly. You knew this was my shop, and you came here anyway." Miguel's face crumpled.
"Abuela, no."
"I swear I didn't know. We were just driving around looking for someplace that looked easy, and when I saw the sign, I thought maybe, but I didn't know you still worked here. I thought maybe you'd sold it, or what?" Elena's voice was getting stronger, fed by a growing sense of betrayal that hurt worse than any physical pain. "Or that your grandmother would be dead by now. Is that what you were hoping for?"
No. No. Abuela, never.
"I would never, but you would rob me." The words came out flat and hard. "You would point a gun at your own grandmother and steal the last thing I have left of the man who raised you when your father ran off." Miguel flinched as if she'd slapped him. "He's not my grandfather," he mumbled. "He was more of a grandfather to you than your real one ever was." Elena snapped, her grief and fear transforming into something fiercer. "Mario loved you like his own blood. He taught you to tie your shoes, to ride a bike, to be a man. And this is how you honor his memory." The shop fell silent again. The leader was getting impatient, shifting his weight from foot to foot and glancing toward the windows as if expecting police sirens at any moment. The second robber was checking his phone, probably worried about how long they'd been inside. But Miguel and Elena were locked in their own private world of hurt and disappointment and love gone wrong. "Where's your mother?" Elena asked quietly. "Does Carmen know what you've become?" Miguel's laugh was bitter and broken. "Mom kicked me out 2 years ago. Haven't talked to her since." "Why?" "Because I stole her prescription pills and sold them." Miguel's confession came out in a rush, like poison being expelled from a wound. "Because I couldn't hold a job. Because I brought dealers to her house. Because every time she looked at me, she saw Dad, and every time I opened my mouth, lies came out." Elena absorbed this information like physical blows. Carmen was her only child, and Miguel was Carmen's only child. Elena had always assumed that if something happened to her, they would take care of each other. The idea that her daughter and grandson had been struggling, that they'd fallen apart without her even knowing, was almost too much to process. "So you turned to this?" Elena gestured toward the gun, toward Miguel's companions, toward the whole horrible situation. "You decided that robbing innocent people was better than asking your family for help." "You don't understand," Miguel said, and now the tears were falling freely down his cheeks. "I tried to get clean. I tried so many times. But every time I failed, I felt more worthless. More like a disappointment. More like someone who didn't deserve to be part of a good family." "So, you decided to prove it by becoming a criminal?" Miguel had no answer for that. He stood there crying, looking younger than his 22 years. Looking like the little boy Elena remembered tucking into bed during sleepovers at her house. "Enough," the leader barked. "This is taking too long. Grab the jacket and let's bounce." "Wait," Miguel said, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his hoodie. "Maybe we should just take the money and leave. The jacket doesn't mean anything to us, but it means everything to her." The leader stared at Miguel like he'd grown a second head. "Are you serious right now? You're gonna go soft because she's your grandma?" "She raised me," Miguel said quietly. "When my dad left and my mom was working 3 jobs, my grandmother was the one who made sure I ate dinner and did my homework and had clean clothes for school. She taught me right from wrong." "Well, she did a shitty job," the second robber said with a cruel laugh. "Because here you are, robbing her." Miguel flinched again, but he didn't back down. "I know what I am. I know what I've become. But that doesn't mean I have to keep making it worse." Elena watched this exchange with a mixture of hope and heartbreak. Maybe there was still something of her sweet grandson left inside this hollow-eyed stranger. Maybe the boy she'd loved wasn't completely gone. But the leader wasn't interested in family redemption stories. "You can have your crisis of conscience on your own time," he said, pointing the gun directly at Elena's chest. "Right now, we're taking everything valuable in this shop, including that jacket. And if Grandma here has a problem with that, she can discuss it with my friend here." He waggled the gun for emphasis, and Elena felt her knees go weak. This was really happening. After 73 years of life, after surviving poverty and immigration and her husband's death and all the other challenges that had been thrown at her, she was going to be murdered in her own shop by her own grandson's criminal friends. And Miguel was going to watch it happen. "Please," Elena whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to God or to the gunman or to the ghost of her husband. "Please don't do this." But Miguel stepped forward then, putting himself between Elena and the leader's gun. "No," he said, and his voice was stronger than it had been all night. "You're not going to hurt her." The leader's eyes went wide with disbelief. "Are you out of your mind? Get out of the way." I said no. Miguel's hands were still shaking, but he didn't move. "Take the money from the register. Take whatever else you can find. But you're not taking that jacket, and you're not hurting my grandmother." "Your grandmother?" the second robber said mockingly. "I thought you said she wasn't family." "I lied," Miguel said simply. "She's the best person I've ever known, and I've already hurt her more than anyone should ever be hurt. I'm not going to let you make it worse." For a moment, Elena thought the leader might actually shoot Miguel. The gun was pointed directly at her grandson's chest, and she could see the anger and frustration in the gunman's eyes. This was not how the robbery was supposed to go. This was not part of the plan. But then, from somewhere outside, came the sound of sirens. Faint but getting closer. "Shit," the second robber hissed. "Someone called the cops." The leader looked around the shop wildly, as if searching for another exit. But Morales' shoe repair only had two ways out, the front door and the back door, and both led to streets that would soon be crawling with police. "This is your fault," he snarled at Miguel. "All this family drama bullshit. We should have been in and out in 5 minutes." "Yeah, well, we weren't," Miguel said. "So, what are we gonna do now?" The sirens were definitely getting closer. Elena could hear at least 2 different vehicles, maybe more. Someone in the neighborhood must have heard the gunshot and called 911. Or maybe they'd seen the 3 hooded figures enter the shop and recognized trouble. Either way, the robbery was about to become something much more serious. "We run," the leader decided.
Right now.
"All of us." "I'm not running," Miguel said quietly. The leader spun toward him, gun raised. "What did you say?" "I said I'm not running." Miguel's voice was calm now, almost peaceful. "I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of hurting people I love." Elena felt her heart breaking and mending at the same time. This was the grandson she remembered, brave, stubborn, willing to stand up for what was right even when it cost him everything. "You're gonna get us all arrested," the second robber said frantically. "No," Miguel replied. "I'm gonna get me arrested. You two can leave. Go out the back door through the alley. You'll probably make it to your car before the cops get here." The leader was practically vibrating with rage. "You think you're some kind of hero now? You think one good deed makes up for all the shit you've done?" Miguel looked at Elena, and for just a moment, she saw the little boy he used to be. The one who'd cried when he accidentally stepped on an ant, who'd given away his Halloween candy to kids who didn't have costumes, who'd told her every day that he loved her. "No," Miguel said softly. "I don't think one good deed makes up for anything, but maybe it's a start." The sirens were very close now. Elena could see red and blue lights flashing through the front windows of the shop. In a matter of seconds, the police would be at the door. The leader cursed violently and headed for the back of the shop. "This is insane. You're throwing your life away for some old lady and a stupid jacket." "That old lady is the reason I know the difference between right and wrong," Miguel said. "Even if I haven't been living by it." The second robber hesitated for a moment, looking back and forth between Miguel and the approaching sirens. Then he too ran for the back door, following the leader into the alley. Miguel made no move to follow them. Instead, he walked slowly to the corner where his grandfather's jacket hung and carefully lifted it from its hook. He held it out to Elena with both hands, like an offering. "I'm sorry, Abuela," he said, and his voice was thick with tears. "I'm sorry for everything. For being such a disappointment. For scaring you. For becoming someone you can't be proud of." Elena took the jacket with trembling hands, clutching it to her chest. She could feel the envelope in the left pocket, Mario's final message still waiting to be read. "Miguel," she whispered, "I know you probably never want to see me again," he continued. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want you to know that every good thing I ever learned, I learned from you and Abuelo. And maybe someday I can remember how to be that person again." The police were pounding on the front door now, shouting commands. In a few seconds, they would break down the door and find Elena and Miguel inside, victim and perpetrator, grandmother and grandson, 2 people whose lives had just collided in the most tragic way possible. Elena looked at Miguel's face, really looked at it, perhaps for the first time since his hood had fallen away. Beneath the hollow cheeks and the desperate eyes and the premature lines carved by addiction and bad choices, she could still see traces of the beautiful child he'd been. The child who'd sat in this very shop, coloring pictures of flowers to give to her. The child who'd helped her arrange shoes by size, who'd swept the floors without being asked, who'd told her she made the best hot chocolate in the world. That child was still in there somewhere, buried under years of pain and poor decisions and whatever demons had driven him to this point, but still there. "Miguel," Elena said again, and this time she reached out and touched his face with her free hand. "Mijo." Miguel closed his eyes and leaned into her touch, and for just a moment, they were simply grandmother and grandson again. Not victim and criminal. Not the woman who'd been terrorized and the man who'd terrorized her. Just family. "I love you," Elena whispered, and she meant it.
Despite everything.
Despite the fear, and the betrayal, and the gun, and the tears. Despite the fact that he'd walked into her shop with strangers and threatened the thing she treasured most. Despite all of it, she loved him. Miguel's eyes flew open, as if he couldn't believe what he'd heard. "I love you," Elena repeated, louder this time. "I've always loved you. I never stopped loving you. Even when you disappeared. Even when your mother said you were in trouble. Even tonight, when I saw your face and thought my heart might stop. You're my grandson. Your family. And family doesn't stop loving each other, no matter what." Miguel sobbed then, a broken sound that seemed to come from the deepest part of his soul. "Abuela, I don't deserve." "Love isn't about deserving," Elena said firmly. "Love is about choosing. And I choose to love you. I've always chosen to love you." The front door splintered then, and suddenly the shop was full of police officers with guns drawn and voices shouting commands. Elena and Miguel were separated, pushed to opposite sides of the room, hands zip-tied behind their backs while the officers secured the scene. But even as they were pulled apart, even as the chaos of the arrest swirled around them, Elena kept her eyes on Miguel's face. And she saw something there that hadn't been there before. Hope. Fragile and tentative, but real. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe her grandson could still find his way back to the person he was meant to be. Maybe love really was stronger than addiction, stronger than shame, stronger than all the forces that had tried to destroy the beautiful boy she'd raised. As the police led Miguel toward the door in handcuffs, he looked back at Elena one last time. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. Elena clutched Mario's jacket tighter to her chest, feeling the weight of the unread letter in its pocket. Tomorrow, she would find the courage to open that envelope. Tomorrow, she would read her husband's final words and learn whatever truths he'd wanted to share with her. But tonight, she had learned something else entirely. Tonight, she had discovered that love, real, unconditional, family love, could survive anything. Even this. The shop fell quiet after the police left, taking Miguel with them. Elena sat alone on the floor where she'd fallen hours earlier, surrounded by the debris of her normal life. Broken glass, scattered tools, the overturned stool where Mario used to drink his morning coffee. But she wasn't thinking about the mess or the trauma, or even the fact that she'd have to testify against her own grandson in court. She was thinking about the look in Miguel's eyes when she told him she loved him. The way his whole body had sagged with relief, as if he'd been holding his breath for years and could finally exhale. Love didn't fix everything. It couldn't erase the addiction or the crime or the pain that had brought them to this moment. But it was a beginning, a foundation to build on, a reason to hope that tomorrow might be different than today. Elena pressed her face into Mario's leather jacket and breathed in the fading scent of the man who taught her how to love unconditionally. And for the first time in 3 years, she felt him there with her. Not gone, but present. Not lost, but found in the love that connected all of them, the living and the dead, the broken and the whole.